The newest Tinto Talks is here, and boy is it a big one, because today we're going to be discussing the combat system, and not only that, thanks to the Reddit users that have been putting a lot of effort into the political map for EU5, we're going to be doing a little bit of a game afterwards, where we're going to fill in all the nations that we have within the European continent. Big shout out to Brennan the Nerd, who was kind enough to take the time and build up this map with the outlines of the political border from the previous dev diary. Also guys, check out this awesome work of art over here. So this is, of course, the war between the English and the French. We got the famous English longbowmen together with pikemen against the French cavalry units. I think we all know what famous battle this is, but I'm curious, what famous battle do you guys think it is? Let me know in the comments section. Totally not fishing for comments here for the algorithm. Speaking of, did you know we're close to 200,000 subs? You know, maybe if you enjoyed the content, subscribe. Once we reach 200,000, I will be doing a mega campaign. I'm gonna start the mega campaign on a live stream on YouTube. I think you guys are gonna really enjoy that. Also, when we do this part of the video later, after we discuss the dev diary, I also want to tell you guys how much the estimated amount of units each nation will have, or at least the big boys will have, because based on the recent dev diaries, we have a bit of an idea of how units work in EU5, and then we can also figure out how many units with the cunning use of history books. That's right, I took a little bit of extra time for this video, and I've had a few history books I've gone through. Johan also mentions that EU4, you know, that game that this game, Project Caesar, is the continuation of, has just had the Winds of Change expansion. You can still use my link if you like to check it out, by the way. It would help the channel out a lot. I'd appreciate it as well. And then we start going into the juicy stuff. Military organization. While there is a very large number of different types of units, they all belong to one of four different categories: infantry, cavalry, artillery, or auxiliary. Infantry is usually the bulk of most armies, and the other categories have specific roles in a campaign. So let's analyze this for a sec. First off, he says that there's a very large number of different types of units. Yes, that is very correct. You know how in EU4 you have units that are changed according to technology. You have, starting from the Western units, the Chevauché, you go over to the Schwarzreiter and so on. Well, this system in EU5 is going to be a little bit more similar to Imperator Rome and CK3. It's kind of like Imperator Rome's military system having a baby with CK3's military system, because the retinues that you have in CK3 are going to be basically the footprint for the regiments. They're not going to be retinues, they're going to be called regiments. And hear out what he says here. The size of regiments varies over time, with the earliest infantry regiment using 100 men, just like the earliest retinue in CK3 has 100 men, and then you upgrade your retinue. I think it's up to maximum of level 5 in CK3 if I'm not mistaken. However, by the end of the game, you will be able to have 3,200 men in each infantry regiment. So that means your infantry, which is the bulk, the main type of unit, will have up to 32 upgrades, which will likely be brought about by different technologies, by different maybe missions or different flavor, who's to say. Take note, cavalry, artillery, and auxiliary units have a different size. Let's go a little bit back here, because it's really important we discuss these four categories. So cavalry, artillery, and auxiliary. We basically understand that infantry is going to be the main thing, but what are the other three going to be used for? Obviously, artillery's main point in the early campaign is going to be to break down the walls, and as you progress in the campaign, artillery is going to get more and more effective at actually dealing damage against the enemy infantry, or the enemy army in general, which is actually historical, because in the 1300s, artillery was used. That's right, EU4. It was literally around in the 1300s. It was actually massively used in the French and English War, the 100 Years' War, by the French initially, and then the English picked up as they went along as well. Artillery, I suspect, is going to be very small compared to the infantry. So to give a bit of an example, here's a Wikipedia page from the Battle of Vaslui between the Ottoman Empire and the Moldovans, led by the greatest ruler ever, of course, Stefan the Great. It's in the name. It's in the freaking name, everybody. Anyway, the Ottomans got their asses handed to them, which is clearly not why I'm showing this battle out of all that I could possibly show. And the Moldovans had 20 cannons. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. 20 cannons is very underwhelming. However, 20 cannons inflicted a massive amount of damage because of the way that Stefan positioned his cannons overlooking the Ottoman army, which was bottlenecked at the bridge, and then the cannons basically just fired into the mass of piled up together Turks, and it basically killed, look, 40,000 dead. That is massive. That is actually massive. That's one of the biggest defeats the Ottomans have ever freaking had, and definitely the greatest win that Moldovans have ever had. Not to you know, discredit the Ottoman Empire, despite winning the Battle of Vaslui. The terms of the peace between Moldova and Ottomans were pretty much on the Ottoman side. side. So technically the Ottomans still won. We had our shining moment in this battle, okay? Let's leave it as that. What we want to get from this particular battle is that 20 cannons. So that was in 1475. Reality is artillery regiments should have about 5 to 10 units. I'm not even joking if we're actually considering the cannons, or if we take into account all of the units that, you know, manned the cannons, then probably like 30, 40 units maximum. Then cavalry, it will depend. I'm not sure what size the cavalry is going to have. It could technically be on par with the infantry regiments if we're talking about the hordes and so on, right? But then again, the Western nations had significantly less cavalry, so I don't know. Auxiliary units, what is that going to be? I'm personally suspecting that auxiliary units is going to be something along the lines of the Imperator Rome's baggage train. So you have the mules that carry the supplies, and you have the sappers that try and break down the enemy fortifications or build up your own fortifications when your army is encamped. So I do expect sappers and supply mules and something of the sorts to be a part of the auxiliary units, which would obviously not fit into the infantry regiment, the cavalry, or the artillery groups, right? Because if we're just talking auxiliary units as in, oh, units from another country, then they technically could still fit into the other three categories. You wouldn't need a special category for auxiliaries in that case, right? So only thing I can imagine is something along those lines. And I have to give a big shout out to Johan. The idea of increasing the infantry regiment size as you progress in technology and in time is really brilliant, like actually brilliant, because that just basically illustrates how, historically speaking, this happened a lot, right? This right here, armies being small in the 1300s and then getting bigger and then smaller after Black Plague as well, and then bigger again and so on. It's the most accurate way of depicting the Middle Ages and the progression of technology and the progression of the military organizations, as they call them, right? Both in game and in real life, after all. We also categorize a regiment as either a levy, a mercenary, or a regular regiment. So that means you could have levy units of cavalry, artillery, or auxiliaries, mercenary, cavalry, artillery, auxiliary, or infantry, or regular. Keep that in mind. Doesn't mean you're only gonna have levy, mercenary, infantry, okay? You could have auxiliaries that are from those two other categories. Any army can freely rearrange those into any stack they want and split up their regiments as the player sees fit. That is brilliant. So that means the regiments are going to be a lot more mobile, a lot more moldable. So it's not going to be like a fixed amount that you cannot do anything with, as is the case in EU4, right? Johan posting the army system with all its glory as it stands right now is a good move, because let's face it, a lot of us were worried that Vicky 3 is going to be, you know, the direction that combat's going to be in EU5, which is clearly not the case. So thank you, Johan, for clearing that up for everybody. Appreciate that. If you want to have half of a mercenary company in one army and the other half in another army, then that is perfectly fine in this game. That's awesome. That's actually awesome. The ability to split your mercenary stacks and your army stacks and just put them apart at different armies is actually big. And check it out, guys. We also have here the horse archer. So this is the unit type. This is the unit itself. Mentions here that this is a unique cavalry unit from the first age that some cultures have access to. Not everybody. So he confirms here that horse archers essentially are going to be basically an Eastern unit available for the hordes, available for the Eastern Europeans, probably for the Persians and so on. Not everyone's going to have access to the horse archers, just like not everyone is going to have access to the Space Marines. That's right. I heard on good faith, really, it's totally not made up by me, that Prussia is going to have Space Marines. I don't know. I feel like it's a great decision, really, and I fully support it. In fact, the plus 50 discipline that the Space Marine unique Prussian unit is going to have is just, it's historical. It's just historical, really. Let's take a little bit of a delve into here, because I find this really interesting. So we got the unit statistics. We've got maximum strength 100 units. That means you can have this regiment up to 100 maximum, because it's obviously at the start of the campaign. So increasing this would require, as I said before, more technology, maybe abilities, maybe ideas. Who's to say? Nobody knows right now. This is the combat power of the unit. Frontage 1. I'm not 100% sure what frontage means, but I'm assuming it has something to do with their ability to stay at the front of the battle line. Morale damage done 20%, which I would assume is good. Unit weight per strength is 100%. Monthly damage from attrition 25%. So this essentially confirms my suspicion previously that the supply system is going to be the same like Imperator Rome. That means that once you have 0 food available for your armies, you're going to start taking attrition. And the amount of attrition taken per month is dependent on the unit itself. So this particular unit's going to take 25% damage from attrition. That essentially means that in 4 months, you're going to lose all your units, if I'm not mistaken from what it means here. And there you go. Food storage 0.4. That's the amount of food they can carry without an actual supply train to help them out. Food consumption 10%. Movement speed speed 3.5, combat speed 5, initiative 8, and flanking ability 200%. Having initiative here tells me that the combat system is going to be something akin to the EU4 combat system, where units with more initiative are going to be the ones that will be prioritized towards getting into the front line and getting into the fight itself first before other units get into the fight. So say for example you have a battle where one side has 100 artillery, 100 infantry, and 100 cavalry, and the other side has 200 cavalry and 100 infantry, and the infantry has, I don't know, let's say 5 initiative, the cavalry has 8 initiative, like it has over here. Then that means that the cavalry is likely going to be the first to engage because of the actual initiative, but depending on the speed, it could be that the infantry also engages pretty much at the same time if they have a similar combat speed and there is enough width on the combat line. So that means initiative is going to come into play when you have more units than you actually have combat with, because let's face it, combat width is still going to be a thing. So make it even more clearer, let's say you have a combat width of 5, but you have 6 units, and then 5 of those units are infantry, 1 of those is cavalry, and the cavalry has higher initiative. That means that 4 units that enter the combat initially are going to be infantry, and 1 is going to be cavalry because it has more initiative than the infantry has. Now we also see that we have a monthly cost of 1 manpower, so regardless of whatever happens, even if you're not doing anything, you're still going to need 1 manpower to maintain the regiment per month. Recruiting the regiment right here for construction, you need 0.1 leather, 1 horse, and 0.1 weapon. Maintaining it is going to be basically a 10th of that, with the exception that it's going to be a 5th of it for the horses, but a 10th for the weaponry and the leather. Let's have a little bit of a historical background here. Riders from the steppes, what do you know? I was right. Have specialized in 2 ways of mounting combat, lancers or archers. For the later, the development of stronger but smaller bows has given them the mobility for the horses and the accuracy and fast volleys that short bows provide, making them ideal for hit and run tactics. I hope you have more of a say in controlling your units, something akin to EU4. That would be really awesome to see in EU5, but that's just my personal preference. I'm curious what you guys think about that actually. Now let's talk about the levies. You can raise your able-bodied fighting men into a fighting force. This provides you with a lot of people that can fight for you, but the levies have a few slight drawbacks. First of all, you can only raise them when you are at war or facing rebels. Second, when you raise your levies, those pops you raise them from are decreased in size to represent the pops going off to war, and any dead men in a levy is population permanently lost. As I said in my previous dev diary, you lose it forever, and that's going to affect your economy. Going to be less people to get taxed, less people to produce your goods for your economy to properly flow. Speaking of that, levies do not spawn with any experience to speak of, and you have no direct control over the type of unit you get. Holy shit. So you can get random, completely random units whenever you levy up. Oh my god, that's going to be very, very juicy. Another slight drawback is that levies do not reinforce during a campaign either. Oh my god. A province where the levies have been raised will also produce less food and raw materials. That makes sense. You can raise all your levies, or you can do it individually from each province. That's good to know. So you can see here the Swedes at the start, I'm assuming, have 12,212 army levies. Coincidentally, that is the same number of EU4 virgins you're gonna get in heaven if you subscribe to me right now. I know a guy, I can hook you up. I can definitely hook you up. But you gotta live to 100. That's the other requirement, okay? Might be 4 of them women as well. I'm not sure. Now, 2,472 of them are from 12 more provinces, so it doesn't show all the provinces. It only says the 10 first provinces, the highest. We can only raise army levies or naval levies when our country is at war facing rebels. Okay, so you have that pop up over there as well. Now, when it comes to the Swedes in 1337, that's actually pretty accurate. Around 12,000 levies would definitely be very, very accurate, since Sweden's population at the time was really not that high. Mercenaries, there are many mercenary companies available in the world, and each area has at least a few possible to recruit. However, they don't have endless manpower, as other nations may be recruiting them before you can. Mercenary company signs up for a 2-year contract, but you can extend the contract if you so desire. More on how mercenaries will be recruited later in the later talk. So let me put it out, okay? Mercenaries is going to be exactly like this. Listen to me carefully, okay? You're listening? You're going to have mercenaries visually shown on the map, and you're going to be able to recruit them either from a menu or directly on the map, which is the exact same system as in Imperator Rome and other games. And then, as mentioned here, you have to renew their contract every 2 years to make sure that you still make use of these mercenaries, and it's going to cost you every time you renew that contract, aside from the monthly upkeep that they will also have. So mercenaries are going to be extremely freaking expensive. That being said, it is historical, because in the 1300s, most nations did have mercenaries to supplement their own retinues and the levies that they use for combat. And mercenary companies, especially in in the North Italian parts of the world. Oh my god, they were so famous and so in use, it's unbelievable. Interesting that you also will have to hire your mercenaries before somebody else does. So that means if you go to war with the French as the English and you've recruited all the mercenary companies around France, you will screw the French over, but you will need to have money to do so. So keep that in mind, because the French are not going to be able to recruit those mercenaries, and from what I assume, you will have direct control of those mercenary units wherever they have been recruited, or probably not from the moment they've been recruited, probably from the moment in which they enter friendly territory. Regular regiments. Your army consists of the regiments that you do not want to disband, and they require manpower to recruit. So that's your standing army as it was known historically. This recruitment cannot be done everywhere though, as you need special buildings to allow recruitment of military units. So in order to recruit units, you probably will need to have a barrack or something named similarly, I assume. Usually these are the same types of buildings that also provide you with manpower. You go from only some special buildings providing a minuscule amount of manpower to being able to build recruitment centers or conscription centers in your core culture locations. Okay, but this also confirms that we're going to have a core system based around cultures. So that's likely going to be similar to how EU3 went, where changing a province's culture is not going to be as easy as you would expect it to be. And special building to allow recruitment. I'm also assuming that in order to recruit special units, you're going to need different buildings too. This is just an assumption. I'm not super sure about this though. Speaking of manpower in EU5, this is primarily generated by buildings. Now you may ask, why do we need manpower when we have Well, for us, manpower represents the more or less semi-trained men that can be used in a military force. Okay, that's interesting to see. What is important, whenever a regiment loses strength, be it from attrition or combat, you will lose hops as well. All right, now we can see the Kurultai here, which is the traditional building for the Mongol hordes. It has a 5,000 population working within this Kurultai. Gives the following benefits to the location: monthly manpower plus 50, can give the ability to recruit regiments there, and the required production method is going to be leather, fabric, paper, and weaponry. You also need some of that to build it. So just to be able to maintain this building, to have the ability to recruit units, you're going to need a requirement for this. So that means you're not going to be spamming recruitment buildings in every province. You're probably going to have like 3-4 maximum provinces in your entire country from where you're going to be recruiting units, which means that if the enemy is right and they figure out where your recruiting provinces are, they could potentially embargo those areas to disallow those provinces from recruiting. Very interesting for multiplayer especially. This might I hope that you're not going to be able to see the buildings in another province unless you have a pretty significant spy working its way there. One other aspect to take into account when it comes to manpower is that in EU5 does not have force limit, but instead you are limited by how many regiments you can maintain. Every regiment requires some manpower each month to maintain the current level of troop. Also requires a lot of different goods, so the amount of regiments that you can maintain is also going to be based off of the economy that you have. So your economic output dictates how big your army is going to be. It also requires a fair amount of goods each month, and if it does not have access to it, morale will drop and it will not be able to reinforce or maintain its current strength. So now we know the debuffs for not being able to properly maintain your units. Pretty significant morale, no reinforcement, and a lowering of strength. That's big. As you may have noticed in some of the screenshots above, units do have a fair bit of unique attributes. There are some common ones for your entire country, such as discipline. Okay, so we have the same like in EU4, which impacts damage taken and damage done. Exactly the same like EU4. Military tactics, which impacts damage taken. All right. Morale of armies, which impacts how long your armies are willing to fight before breaking. Do I need to say it? It's basically exactly the same like EU4. Infantry, cavalry, artillery, auxiliary, power, which is again the same like freaking EU4. It's called combat ability in EU4, but it's scripted as power if you go into the files themselves, which impacts damage done for that category. Oh my god, it even does the same thing like EU4. And then we still have people that believe this is not going to be EU5. Like, actually, man, if you think this is not EU5, tell me in the comment section so I can ban you. I'm gonna ban you. I'm gonna ban every single last one of you unbelievers. You know what? I'm gonna make a camp and I'm gonna send you all to that camp. That's right, I'm sending you to Camp Rock, and we're gonna have Joe Black teach us some music. No, but seriously, you suck. There's also the army tradition, which is primarily gained from the average experience of your armies. Oh my god, can you tell me what game has this system also? Oh, I don't know. Which can be increased by drilling them, impacts the morale and siege ability of your army. So we have a confirmation for siege ability, while also slowly pushing you towards land on the land versus naval societal values. Okay, interesting. So we know that affects that particular part of the sliders. This is not something relative to military, but we have talk about the navies, I'll talk about logistics, and I'll talk about our combat system planned as well in the future. Next week is going to be a new and unique feature. Interesting. What would that be? Who's to say? Nobody knows except Johan. And speaking of, let's see what else Johan has to say. How many dev diaries are scheduled? Many. Guys, not sure if I'm supposed to say this, but expect a lot of them. Expect a lot of them. How do I put this? Get very comfortable with the last DLC for EU4, because you're gonna need to get very comfortable with it. Now, this year is something that restores my faith in Johan. It would be great to start in 1337 with many good rulers, but many good rulers have come and gone since then. I would love to play with each of these rulers. And he says no, flat out. Says during EU3 development, we went with dynamic rulers, as in EU1 and 2 we had historical ones. We spent a large part of development budget on the first expansion to implement it. Nobody used it. Yes, exactly. Don't freaking listen to the forums, because I'm sorry, I hate being that guy, but a lot of people on the forums have really bad ideas. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of really great ideas also, so listen to those, but not to every idea, especially not to the very vocal minority that wants extremely try-hard stuff that the rest of the community doesn't want. Trust, because then you're gonna end up with only those 5 dudes playing the game, and the rest of the people are gonna stay with EU4 because EU5 is gonna be way too complex. Will cavalry move faster? It depends. That is correct. There's going to be different speeds on different cavalry units, which is awesome. Confirms that artillery will use guns. Here's the question from my side. Will we have some type of catapults before artillery, or will we have artillery from the start? Because I think we should have artillery from the start, since we had historically artillery in 1337. But that being said, I don't want to start the game with no artillery, with the freaking thing just blacked out until you research certain technology to get artillery, because that's just not fun. Tradition, army tradition is partially gained based on the average unit experience. So it's Imperator Rome. Exactly how you gain army tradition in Imperator Rome. Huh? I like it, don't get me wrong. I actually like it more than the EU4 system. Okay, so we have a confirmation that we have guns and weaponry as different goods. And he mentions that they keep iterating upon goods buildings constant, so it's not set in stone. This is something that you guys have a say on. I want you to go on the forums and make sure that you tell Johan that we want to have Prussian Space Marine. No, seriously, do it right now. No, I'm not even kidding, okay? We want to have guns, weapons, and Space Marine armors for the Space Marines. And plus 50 discipline. Can we just get... I only want what's historical for this game. Come on! You can store 10 years of production. Interesting. So that's how much you can store when it comes to the manpower pool. You need friendly territory to reinforce for regulars. Mercenaries can be bribed. Oh my god, the dynamic of this is fucking massive. So you can hire a mercenary company, and then mercenaries that you've hired can be bribed by the enemy, probably for a lot more money than they receive from you, to switch sides. And friendly units can only, your regulars can only reinforce in friendly territory. Holy shit, man. I love checking the comment section, because that's always where the juiciest of stuff is. This is massive. This is freaking massive right here. Confirms that the Azores are 3 locations. He says that mercenaries are presented kinda off map, not on map, like I said in the early part of this video. This kinda though, he's not sure about it. So I like to actually see the mercenaries physically on the map, not on off the map. And I'm gonna ask you guys to go on the forum and say that, hey, you know what, maybe it's a good idea to see the mercenaries on the map. Maybe it's also a good idea when you hire the mercenaries to see them march towards your friendly territory, and once they reach the friendly territory, they can officially be used by you. That would be a nice feature. That would freaking be an awesome feature if you ask me. Holy shit, my man actually left us the code for the step horse archers. Brother, what? Okay, so this is the first actual code we have from Project Caesar. Dude. Okay, so we have army type, which is the category is cavalry. Copy from Age1 Traditions Cavalry. Max strength 0.1, morale damage 0.2, initiative 5, movement speed 1.0. So 1.0 movement speed, and if we scroll back, okay, so that's the standard movement speed 1.0, the standard movement for the horse archers. They get bonuses when fighting in grasslands and sparse. So we have 2 confirmed types of terrain, sparse, whatever that might be, and grassland. I'm guessing sparse is probably steppes, and they get 20% combat ability from what I can assume here when fighting in grasslands and steppes. Holy shit, that's huge. That's actually huge. The demand for maintenance and constructions are separate values, so you can edit that in a separate folder from what I can understand here. We have the GFX tag as well. Damn, the game is basically EU4 when it comes to modding. We're gonna get so many awesome mods for this game. Also mentions the levies take time to spawn if it's all in one region. If it's even slower than local. The French army will not reinforce in German lands. Okay. What is the role of auxiliary units? Are they kind of like low tier infantry or like donkeys in Imperator Rome? It's a support unit. Donkeys donkeys in Imperator Rome were auxiliary units. Wait, what? Did he just confirm that donkeys are auxiliary units? Hold up a sec. He said it's a support unit. Yes, donkeys. I'm so confused. Did he just confirm that donkeys is auxiliary units? Because I'm pretty sure he just said that donkeys are auxiliary units. Timur confirmed to be around. He was a 1-year-old toddler in 1337. So mentions the last 3 games for which he was the lead and coded were Vicky 2, EU4 Imperator. Coincidentally, actually my 3 favorite games. So I have faith in this man that he's going to deliver what we want him to deliver. There will be a unique longbow unit for the English, confirmed, okay, which is going to have +5 extra inches for their bows. They're going to have 5 extra inches in their bows. That's what's happening there. Confirms that they're thinking about splitting guns into firearms and cannons. Yes, actually freaking yes. Firearms and cannons, way better than just guns. Because guns, kind of broad, you know? A cannon is a little bit bigger than a firearm. Sure, you can say that both are guns, but they're really not the same thing. Please split them up. I agree with that. That is a great decision. Please split them up. Okay, so he mentions here how the mechanics will work. Basically, with 1 Kurultai, which is going to provide 50 manpower each month, depending on the size of your army, which, because considering that 1 regiment's going to cost 1 manpower each month, you will be able to have, say, for example, 50 regiments, right? Which is 5,000 horse archers. That's going to cost you 50 manpower, but it's also going to cost you the rest of the stuff. So more likely, say you get 2,500, which is 50%. That means you still gain monthly increase in manpower, and aside from the loss that you get by default. Also, want to mention that I don't normally go through all the comments. I know some of you guys said that, oh, Ludi, you didn't read all the comments. He said some of the times he repeats questions that people ask again and again. Some of the stuff is not as interesting, but I do recommend you guys check out the forums themselves. Johan gives out so much on the forums, it's insane. You're always gonna find some juicy stuff for sure. Also, we have a special Sunday marketplace here, or Saturday building, right? Okay, so every Saturday he gives away something, right? And we have, for example, the marketplace here, which shows that it offers a simulation speed +1%, merchant power, capacity +1 flat, burger trade capacity 25%. Very little requirements considering all that it you know, offers. That merchant capacity is huge, let's face it, and it's probably going to be pretty expensive to build a marketplace from what I can assume. But juicy as snaps to see the marketplace highlighted. All right, now let's do what I was saying at the start of the campaign, or better yet, the start of the video. What am I talking about? Campaign? What kind of campaign am I talking about here? So we're gonna use the good old paintbrush to paint some of these nations about, starting with, of course, the Golden Horde, which is going to be a golden, and which in our timeline, I'm not sure if Johan's going to divide this into. From what I can tell, it's not divided into, so it's just going to be the Golden Horde like this here. And we're also going to have Muscovy right next to him. Then up north, we're going to have the Novgorod Republic. Hold up, that is not the right color. There you go. This is the Novgorod Republic with all of its glory. We probably already expected this is going to be the Livonians. This in the north is either going to be the breakaway, well, it's going to be the Danes, but as we already know, the Danes are not really going to be a thing. I'm really good at paint. I promise I'm really good at I paint for a living stuff on the map, okay? I'm going to go with the big boys first. Let's go ahead and color the Teutons as well. Same color as the rest of the map because that's how you do it. Then the Livonians as well. The big nations are fairly easy to get actually. So I'm going to speed run this a little bit here. I do assume that this right here is going to be the Galicia Volhynia, and this is going to be Kiev right next to it, with the greatest of all nations, by the way, Moldova right here, right next to the semi-greatest, the Wallachians. Not really great, but you know, we tolerate them. Got the Ottomans in the south, the Byzantines right across from them on the straits, and they still have the little holdout here. Oh, did I just cover the entirety of the Ottomans? That wasn't on purpose, guys, I promise. We also got the Bulgarians up north, the great Serbian Empire right over here, with the even greater Hungarian crown, which in 1337, honestly, the Hungarians were probably the strongest nation within Central Europe. Bohemia was a little bit divided, though, with the Moravia being a little bit broken away from them. Take note, the colors are not official or anything. I'm just assuming this is one of the colors that will be used. I don't know what actual color is going to actually be used for these nations. Oh my god, Brandenburg. Oh, I'm sorry. I just came when I clicked that. Oh, look. Can we just take a few moments and just stare? Just a little bit of staring. Never hurt no one here, I'd say. This is just actually amazing. This is actually beautiful, right? You know what? I'm actually curious. Did anyone on Reddit fill this up? Because I'm sure somebody did. No brainer. Someone must have filled this up. I'm going to check Reddit right now. Well, all I found was this. Might be more. Maybe I just didn't find it. But we do have Western Europe here. Shout out to Revok98, who I assume made this. I don't know. He posted it 22 hours ago, so I'm just guessing it is him. They made it. Great job, Revok. This is actually really well done. I'm honestly impressed. So we have Flanders, Brabant, Hainaut in the north here. We got the English over there. We got Alençon, Brittany, Anjou, Normandy. A lot of the crowns that basically were were subjects of the French crown, a lot of the dukes and baronies and so on that were subjects of the French, including the crowns of Burgundy. Oh my god, there's so many little ones here. Trier, Luxembourg's around too. Strasbourg, Lichtenberg. I never even know about this. Dagsburg. Bitch. Okay. Okay, okay. All right, buddy. Hold up a second here. What did you just call me? Is this tactically put in here just to... Okay, I'm gonna remember this, Revok. I'm coming for you, boy. In the south, pretty much same situation. I like to see some of this stuff here. Like we have Pavia, Parma, Tortona, Bobbio. Did you just make up nations, man? Come on. No, I'm just kidding. Bobbio actually was a little county, for that matter, that got annexed by the Milanese within the 1300s. How do I know that? I'm a fucking nerd. Andorra over here just chilling. The nation that still exists today. Nobody managed to take these bad boys. And Castile pretty consolidated with Aragon and Navarra. Let's go back to my little mapping project though, because I like to paint my map. If I cannot paint it, then nobody else can. No, pretty much everybody can. All right, so we don't need to do the west because we have already seen that. We do have here the Kingdom of Naples. We have the Papal States as well. We're gonna make it white. Now I'm also gonna do something that will piss everybody off. I'm gonna make Sweden yellow because that's the color they should get, just like pee-pee. Haha. Well, your flag has yellow in it, okay? So it can be either blue or yellow. I'm gonna go with yellow. And I'm gonna make even more of a hassle here by making the Norwegians blue, okay? There you go. And the Danish crown is gonna be like, okay, so we probably realized very early on that the Danes are gonna be in trouble. Now, whether they own all of these lands or not is another question. What we do know is that a lot of their lands actually got pawned off to various Germanic lords by 1337. So I'm not sure how Paradox is gonna depict it, but it's gonna be very interesting for sure to see. Also, just look at the amount of little duchies you have in counties and so on within the HRE. That is insane, man. That is actually insane. Can we get an outline actually of the HRE? Let me see if I can get an outline of this. Burgundy part of the HRE. Then we have that part. Probably would need to include this as well, wouldn't I? Not 100% sure on that, but I think I will. There you go. All the way to the south. There you go, baby. Oh my god, that's juicy. Oh, that's really juicy. Oh, I'm having an HRE-gasm right there. I'm having an actual HRE-gasm. Probably not this. Okay, how do you... I'll figure it out later. Don't worry about it. The borders of the HRE with the Moravian parts and going around the Silesian parts as well. And that's pretty much it. Now, I want to also do something for the big nations. As I said earlier, I want to give a little bit of a unit count, right? So I'm going to leave some books for reference in the comment section below if you guys are interested as well. What I used for this video is basically the medieval armies of Europe 1300 to 1500 by Terence Wise. He actually has a whole series of books. It's called the Men at Arms series, and there's a lot of books, and I got most of them a while back because these are books from the 1970s, and I used them in my university. Actually, I used them for research and shit, so it actually came in handy for once in my life. You know when they tell you in university, learn this because it's gonna come in handy, it never works, okay? Except if you make EU4 videos and you end up actually needing accurate numbers for units within the 1300s to a certain degree, right? Because nothing's set in stone. Who knows what the actual numbers were? So I'm gonna start with the Great Horde. This is gonna be a shocker, boys, but I think they're gonna have around 76,000 units. Why do I think that? Because this video was sponsored by the Great Horde. No, it's not because of that. It's because the Great Horde actually did have a fuck ton of units at the time. It was, in my opinion, the largest army within the European continent by far, and they could easily sustain these numbers. And from a historical accounts, they range between 50,000 to 120,000. So I'm gonna go in the middle, and I'm gonna say it's 70-something thousand, which, because you know, in history books, depending on the biases, someone's gonna say the enemy had 50,000, the other guy's gonna say they had 100,000, whether it was more suiting for them to say they fought more enemies or to say that they had fewer troops but they won against an army with more units. Up next is the Ottomans. Very tiny at the start of the campaign. However, the Ottomans likely had around 20 to 30,000. I'm gonna say 23,000. There you go, round it out. Might have been more, might have been less, I don't really know, but this is a fairly good estimate if you ask me. Remember, this is the time when the Ottoman Empire started to actually expand, and it took advantage of a few situations happening around it, with various natural disasters destroying the Byzantines, and with the Byzantines destroying the Byzantines themselves because of the multiple civil wars they had. But that being said, it's not just the luck, right? The Ottomans did have a significant army despite being this size, which they used to conquer and expand to the range to which they became one of the greatest empires in history. That's also why for the Byzantines, considering the rebellions and the civil war they were in and everything, I would say and I'm being a little bit generous here, about 17,000 actual units, because despite being bigger lands, they had like 2 civil wars already, man, and it's not even the end of the civil wars. There's gonna be probably scripted 2 more civil wars in the making right after the game starts. Plus, the civil wars that did happen had massive casualties, and it's not that easy to just recover your soldiers. Remember, they got to be born, trained, fed liquid jelly, and everything else that medieval units had to undergo in order to become soldiers, you know? The English, on the other hand, probably had about 30 to something thousand units. I'm going to go with 30 just to be a little bit generous here. They didn't have as many as the French did, but they did have strong professional units, like the French did, actually, for that matter. The French also were known for having really good trained knights and so on. The big upper hand that the French had, and I'm saying 45,000 for the French, but truth is they probably had 60,000. I just don't want to be that guy and say 60,000, because then it's basically the French have twice the units that the English have, but it's likely what was happening. Remember that a lot of the French were decentralized. That means that unlike the English crown, which had more of a centralized armed force with a bigger retinue, the French had multiple smaller ones, because they had a fuck ton of little duchies and baronies and so on. So when the king mustered the armies of the various lords, they would come with their own retinues, which added up more than the English, and also added up to really professional units, because all of these retinues were basically professional soldiers, knights, men-at-arms, and so on. So yeah, the French did have the upper hand. The plague fucked them up though, so it is what it is. And the English had the longbow, by 5 inches long. Going back to Central Europe, Hungary at this time would probably have around 30,000, and yes, this is an estimate, they could have had 35,000, plausible, definitely plausible, but it wouldn't be more than 35,000 maximum, because we have from various accounts the numbers for their army. This was, of course, a lot of them standing army, but it wasn't as professional as the Western units were, because they didn't have as many heavy infantry as the West had for that time, since they didn't really need it, because when they were fighting, they were probably fighting the hordes, or they were fighting later on the Turks and so on, which didn't also have many heavy infantry. They relied more on light infantry. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like. I'll see you in the next one.